You're listening to Peerless Industry Radio, your source for educational content on the cutting edge of industrial process solutions. Today, we will be covering a discussion about the relationship between manufacturers and their supply chain and how aspects of managing this could be potentially improved. I'm James Lamb, your host for today, and joining us will be David McKendry and Patel.
And so, thank you for joining us, Rue, and thank you for joining us, David. To give us some more perspective for our audience on who we have with us today, can you each tell us a bit about your experience and how your current job roles relate to supply chain relationships?
So absolutely. James, thanks for hosting, and I appreciate, Dave, you having me on this call. It's a privilege.
You got it, Rue.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun, so I'm excited about it. I'm not a podcaster guy. I'm a real work guy, so we're going to give this a go. But, I've been in the consumer goods industry, particularly in foods, for 35 years. And in the last several years, have had a chance to lead a couple of General Mills factories and then do some ancillary work around leadership development and building leadership academies, et cetera, within General Mills. So it's been a ton of fun to help develop and grow our plans. And the last one I led in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, is about a $2 billion annual sales facility. So picture that to be like 200 trucks coming in and out every day, 200 semis of products, goods coming in, finished goods going out, 1.5 million square feet under roof, kind of thing. So pretty big food facility, certainly biggest in the General Mills network. But the 30 years I spent with General Mills really gave me a great foundation on things around supply chain. So great experience around leading people, leading organizations, coaching, mentoring, and then driving results in a number of different facets. Obviously through the traditional and non-traditional continuous improvement ways. But also in optimizing, people and building ownership and helping people see a light in terms of how we can take our daily activities and transform them into winning strategies and execute on those things. So had a lot of fun doing that. And when I retired a year ago, part of what I do is I have several folks that I do some executive coaching with. And this kind of, most of them are in the Iowa area, but some are outside, and I've got some West Coast clients. And I try to gravitate towards people who are just generally good people, looking for someone to bounce ideas off, looking for some thought provokers, looking for ideas on how to grow their business. And then the second part of my work is to help small companies grow. And small is intentional for me because after being in an $18 billion organization and a $2 billion subset of that, you kind of get caught up in the grind of it, and you lose some stuff around entrepreneurship, innovation, the ability to just run hard and fix things later and that sort of stuff. So it's been terrific. My wife would say I'm failing retirement. I am. I'm failing it with a smile on my face. I'm loving what I'm doing. Helping people is good, and really working with good people is just a privilege.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you're really executing on a vision that you have developed.
And I'm having fun.
Which is very important. David, how about you?
Well, first of all, I'm glad that he's failing at retirement because that's to our benefit, first and foremost. So our relationship to supply chain, James, comes from years of being involved in local industry in Buffalo, New York, starting back over 100 years ago. A company that was started by my great-grandfather, actually, and was a small business, storefront business that grew into a pretty significant player in the region, servicing industry that reached, within 200-300 miles of our headquarters here in Buffalo, focused mainly on maintenance activities inside of facilities similar to General Mills, which Rue and I met through I think it was a Better Business Bureau meeting we went to just coincidentally. And from there, we had a good conversation. And today we've been, friends, acquainted and friends ever since. But during that window of time when I ran into Rue, I would say that was 20 plus years ago at least. We were, as a business involved in trying to understand how are we going to be relevant as industry was changing. The Rust Belt in general was declining. Manufacturing was not a real strong economic environment to be a part of. So as someone that was young coming out of college, kind of at the point in time where the dot-com era was growing and accelerating, there was a real interest in my part to try to figure out how to take what we knew as a business locally and translate that in a different way globally. And initially it was sort of a pipe dream to do that, but over the course of the next 10 to 20 years, we slowly but surely found our way into various industries and became relatively well known in niches that had to do with engineered equipment. And what this conversation is about in terms of supply chain is our experiences as an organization, having good success, learning from supply chain folks who understand a way to do business that has to do with collaboration and leveraging knowledge and technology to find ways to do things better. So, we've had some really interesting experiences we'll talk about, I'm sure. But in terms of our business, a local distributor who is today very focused on the global supply chain and trying to find ways to be relevant and have an impact. And as Rue has said to us before, as an organization, we want to look like help to that supply chain. And that's what we're here to talk about. So that is our relationship, James.
That's great.
Supply chain.
What have been some techniques? So based on your experiences from your time in interacting with supply chains, what are some techniques or mindsets that you found success in managing those kind of relationships that you were talking about?
Yeah, so I'll throw one out there. So, as a big company, we think we're big and we think we're bad and we think we're all to our suppliers, right? So you tend to work through a sourcing organization that's global, and they basically drive low cost, and that's what that organization does. So as a recipient of that in a site, the low cost matters for sure. But the transactional nature of that behavior is not super helpful. It's not productive. And so it's like, I'm ordering a valve and a valve shows up and it's like, okay, I got a valve. So what helped us, and it took us a while, and we actually built a little team around it that was super successful, was just understanding that, you can't be friends with everybody, but if you pick your top 5 or 8 suppliers and work with them up and down their value chain and expect them to look like help, but you as a customer look like help too. Over time, you can move from a customer supplier, worse yet, a customer vendor relationship to a supplier relationship to a partnership. And the partnership has some open rules, but really succinct ones around being mutually beneficial. So while I may want things like better quality and faster service, I don't really want to pay for it. And the supplier doesn't want to be in a business that's margin decretive to them. So finding a way to meet all those goals isn't easy, but when you sit down at the table or go into the lab, which is your floor or their factory, you find ways to do that just through good communication and good trust built up over time. And this behavior has changed a paradigm in terms of how we work with our customers and translate them to partners. We're very open with those conversations about where they stand and where we want them to go. And, you have to kind of work your way into it. It's been fun, not easy, but it's been fun and very, very rewarding, to the tune of netting us millions of dollars on an annual basis on improvements and not hurting or harming our partners and actually making them more capable to work with their other customers across the field.
What on our end of it as the supplier, we sat back, personally, when I sat back and looked at our industry, it became very cutthroat at the point in time that I came in because the industry was, receding locally. So the remaining companies, manufacturers, our customers, they became also very constrained economically. So there was as an example, our largest customer when I came into the business was Eastman Kodak. Eastman Kodak was one of the biggest companies on the planet not long before I walked in the door, and today it's obviously a shell of what it was. And our legacy as a business was really predicated on collaboration with Eastman Kodak's manufacturing and engineering teams. And it was really something I think I learned from, hearing about how that worked. Like that's the way you should do business, is collaboration on innovative things. There was some really incredible things that we did as a business with Eastman Kodak as it related to process improvement and safety, technology, things that I learned about really after they'd happened and as things started to turn. But I think taking a step back for us and looking at how has it worked today in our world is there are people like Rue in organizations like General Mills. There isn't a Rue in every corner of General Mills, but there are those types of people who understand total value as opposed to line item pricing. And the idea that in kind of the United States, what we see is the 3 bids and a buy move. We're going to go out to 3 suppliers, we're going to get 3 quotes, and we're going to buy the cheapest one, 3 bids and a buy. And I always say it's this concept of 3 bids and a buy means that 2 out of every 3 American supplier businesses are losers. And to me, that doesn't make any sense. There's a tremendous amount of waste when we're talking about that mindset. So organizationally, our efforts are trying to market ourselves to companies like General Mills, global companies, with an effort to try to find that person inside that organization that understands that if you find your potential top 5 or look at the top 5 you have and know that there's people like Peerless on the other side, but it's so important to find the person inside of an organization that's willing to have that conversation and has the authority, the ability, the decision-making power to affect change. And that's not easy to do. And so much of what I think is the potential of what we're talking about and the potential of what we do as a business and what Rue is doing in his world is the changing of the mindset of how you interact with suppliers and the expectation you should have when you're looking for partners. And what you should expect from your as a customer, what we're looking for, we need to be more selective. The model isn't that way always. You blanket a geography and you sell to everybody that buys what you sell. That doesn't really work. If you want to find the right fit, you need to have a different selection criteria. And I think that's really difficult, and there isn't a model that's been clearly defined yet. But I envision the day when people can do a much better job than laying down a part number and a price, and whoever's cheaper wins the order. Because that doesn't win the bottom line. That doesn't provide long-term sustainable results. It just gets you through that transaction. And for us, we were lucky 15, 20 years ago to come across a supply chain person who did have, in my mind, the first effort to try to identify value. He created a matrix that said, give me your price, but then I have a way to measure what we have in terms of our history and record of your delivery performance, your quality performance, and I can create a factor and say your $1 at being 100% on time and accurate is going to be worth 95 cents to me versus the person that quotes me $1 who's always late and their quality isn't good. Theirs might be 105, 110. So all of a sudden, the two people quoting aren't on the same plane anymore because the supply chain person said, I am going to value something and I'm going to quantify it. And that was innovative to me at the time. And it provided hope that there was an opportunity out there. That's really, again, that's what started the process of me realizing that there's a way to do this, that you don't have to beat your head against the wall, just quoting pricing and losing 2 out of 3 times. You can legitimately roll up your sleeves, work with really great people as customers go and produce, awesome results. The hard part is the job is never done. That's the key, right? The job is never done because you can enjoy the wins for a short window of time, but then you got to go right back to it again. So, and that's a lesson that we learn every day. So,
well, yeah. I like the word value, right? So, I mean, if you don't mind, I'll just continue what Dave said. The word value is very different than a procurement organization we even talk about. They talk about bidding and pricing and unit costs and that sort of stuff. And so what happens with us is that they would bid the lowest cost we'd get a part or we'd get a material and it would not necessarily be functional. So we've got ways to measure things like line efficiency and system efficiency and output, and we measure things in very basic terms, like how many times does that machine stop based on that failure, right? So you can get down to the nitty gritty with it. And we got the cheapest part, but it costs us the most because we can't meet our customers' needs at the other end of it. So this value conversation is really important for us to have, is because we haven't paid more money to get better. We've become more engaged at a low cost to get better. And, I'll give you an example. So we work really closely with our corrugate company, and you can imagine when you're making food, you're using a lot of corrugate. So in our facility, it was tens of millions of dollars to spend on corrugate. So we had their CEO and their couple members of their senior team and purchasing team, and then our local reps in our facility. And I'll never forget this meeting. It's the first time we actually tried this thing. And so I kicked it off and said, hey, we'd like to build a team to improve quality, improve cost performance, improve system performance. And quite frankly, we've got this big spend. I'd like to take 20% off the spend. And of course, the pencil goes down and the CEO's like, I just got called to another customer for a beat down meeting on cost, right? And then very quickly it was like, yeah, but I want to make it so it's agreeable that we're not going to hurt your margins. And he says, I don't know how you could possibly do that. And so if you look at waste in our system and waste in your system, I'm sure we can find ways to take money off this thing without affecting the toll rate. Because one of the things I instructed my team is you can talk about anything but the unit cost, the toll rate. That was off limits because that's negotiated by a corporate office with global volumes and that sort of stuff. But we can certainly make things better and more efficient. So an example of this is about a year later, we found that the corrugate that we used, and this is through us sending people into their facility and their people in our facility and asking like, well, why do you do that? And just appreciating their flat piece of cardboard getting folded and wrapped and glued, and all of a sudden you have a box that's got 16 boxes of cereal in it that's shippable around the world. Mm-hmm. And so through those questions, it's like, well, if we change, or have you thought about changing the way we cut these dies or design this stuff? And for us, it didn't look like it made any difference. You run up the channel, and our customers like Walmart didn't care. I said, why would you bring that up? And said, well, in our system, it makes our changeover so much more efficient, which means we can add capacity at no cost. And oh, by the way, there's material savings involved as well. So this was a win for them. And you established thing with finding wins for your partner that didn't really make a difference to us. Well, it turned out that it did drive some efficiencies with us, but it showed them really quickly that we were really concerned and honest about this value equation. And weren't just looking to skim this thing and make money for ourselves. It was going to be a win-win proposition. And then we tried things that didn't work, and we did a lot of stuff that worked. But that open dialogue, exchange of people, walking through, looking, understanding your data, man, it really, really paid off in a lot of ways. And the results, the activities and results weren't super complicated. But when you open these doors between organizations, all kinds of truths get told, and you ask the question like, well, why do you do that? Or what if? And all of a sudden the light bulbs go off and you can create action out of that.
Rue, I mean, as a supplier to a customer who came to us with sort of a demand that said, we need you to lower your price. And interestingly, one of our segments that we focus on, we call internally our private label business, which in your world, private label means one thing. For us, it's essentially we make a product that is going to be ultimately cataloged by a very large global company. We're a very small segment of what they provide, but it's a significant piece of business that we have and various customers that provide it. But that product goes into a catalog. It has a fixed price and they're selling it through distribution. So it has to be maintained tightly. So when we went through a process of establishing the baseline price, they came back and said, well, it's just not marketable at that rate. We need to lower the price if we're going to go into the market and compete with this product. So we looked back and forth internally and really had a hard time identifying a way to lower the cost. But what we asked was if we could come and visit their facility that happened to be out in the Midwest. And they, graciously invited us in. And it was based on, I guess I would say, it's almost a rite of passage for us as a supplier is first, make sure you're generally competitive. price-wise, make sure that you're doing the right things quality-wise. You deliver on time. You don't send bad product in. Now you're going to get on the radar screen as capable. We were capable. And so because of that, this customer invited us in to say, okay, we'll show you everything we do when your product hits the door, and let's see if there's something you're seeing that we're not that might be able to help. And sure enough, when we got in there, one of our key people was able to go in and have a great dialogue with some manufacturing and got right down on their floor with the way our product came into their building and the way they broke it down and some of the steps. And they found some significant wasted steps and duplicate effort that we were actually already doing and they didn't realize. And it had to do with a testing procedure and process. That alone, when they did the math, saved them significantly more than what it would have been if we were just to lower the cost to where they wanted it to be, because they were layering in all these additional internal costs. So it was a phenomenal opportunity for us to get the chance to both maintain our margin and reduce their costs simultaneously. And again, we won and they won. And that product has been a part of our revenue stream now for many, many years. So a great win for all of us, and a great example of what it would be like if, you as a customer of ours, Rue, have that opportunity to do those. You can't collaborate with everybody, but if you can identify the capable and bring them in to have this dialogue to say, how might we change this, or what if, those things ultimately it could provide the best bang for the buck, way more game-changing potentially significance. And ours is just a very small example.
This concludes this episode of Peerless Industry Radio. Join us in our next episode for the second half of today's discussion. I've been your host, James Lamb, and the speakers this episode have been David McKendry and Patel. If you are listening to the audio version of this podcast and want to engage with us more online, check out the Peerless Inc. YouTube channel, where you can see as well as hear any future productions. If you have any questions or comments, be sure to reach out and contact us through our website or any social media platform. Your feedback is very important to us. From everyone here at Peerless, thanks for listening to Peerless Industry Radio.